What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? You come home after a long day, you need football in your life the TTNL way. You tap on your phone after fantasy play. Pause, not like that before you take it the wrong way. You have an idea what players to draft, then tap on a bill like genuine draft. Study all the players, look close at the stats. A QB first and a top running back. First you hear Cool Kennedy audio, then on your screen you see Jack with Ivan and Claudio. It's a take, never lies production. They keep it fantasy with Ivan's porno production. Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, it's a football fantasy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keepin' It Fantasy, the best fantasy show on The Tape Never Lies.
You son of a bitch, you.
I know. What's up, guys? I'm Ivan Vargas. That's Chris Jackal.
That'd be me.
Again, this way. That'd
Yeah,
be him.
You'll figure it out.
Another week of fantasy football in the books. It was good for some, bad for a lot of others.
Did you have DJ Moore? Did you have Justin Fields? Did you have Jamar Chase smack you around if you had DJ Moore?
Did you have Travis Etienne?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a bunch of guys who went off. In particular, our Bears, Justin Fields and DJ Moore. Those guys put up some gaudy numbers.
Holy shit.
This weekend.
Depending on your leagues, you were looking at 50 points from DJ Moore.
Yeah.
Justin Fields was close to 40. I mean, it's Fields has put up decent fantasy numbers all year. You know, I hate to say it, you know, he had like one stinker, but outside of that, he's been pretty he's been pretty good for you. But yeah, this week was for if you're a Bears fan and you had either of those guys, you were happy. And if you stack them like some of us did, I may be one of those guys in a few leagues. I was pretty happy. But I did lose one game where I had both of those guys in my lineup.
Did you?
Jamar Chase and Travis Etienne got me. I went into Sunday. I had Devontae Adams, and I thought I was down 7.5 points. I got 7.4, and I lost by 0.3. So fuck me, whatever. Great.
Yeah, it is what it is. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes
you can't win if you don't play, Ivan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly, it happens sometimes. But I ended up having a good week. Had a couple wins. Like I said, Stephon Diggs has just been on a tear.
Oh, yeah.
Breece Hall, I forgot to mention, Breece Hall had himself a game as well, picking up right where he left off. It seems in the past couple of weeks, he's kind of struggled a little bit in the first go of the season, but in the past couple of weeks, he seems like he's gotten his legs under him, and he should be a guy you should reckon with, dude. Like he's at best he could be the top running back in the league. I feel. Just the way that he moves, the way that he runs, his explosion. I really feel like he could be, if not the best, top 3 running backs in the league.
And I think with Hackett, I think you're seeing them, especially with Wilson as the quarterback, they're going to be running the ball, I think, a little more. It just speaks to Breece Hall being the guy for the Jets, but also for your fantasy team. He's starting to impact some of. Well, it's also the Zach Wilson effect, but like I think it's going to eat into the Garrett Wilson shares, or targets, not shares. And so you're absolutely right. Breece Hall was phenomenal. I mean, he had 165 yards, I think, something like that. He had a couple touchdowns, he had a couple catches. It's a beast. What do you have?
177 and 3 catches, 17 yards.
28.4 points. I mean, shit, Zach Moss, he's like, hey, Jonathan Taylor, you signed that big contract. Welcome back. I think I'm just going to go off today and, let the Colts know that they still got somebody. That was unbelievable. That
one is surprising. That one was more surprising. And I'm I'm not sure how sustainable that is. You know what I'm saying? Especially
Taylor's back too.
Right. Especially that he's back. But it's like, hey, man, like, what a time to choose to go off. You know what I mean? Like, when your job's on the line. But yeah.
And you talked about Travis Etienne too, man. 36.4 points. I mean, another monster. He was kind of underperforming this year, and it was nice to see him have a nice little number out in London. You know, he benefited from staying out there and enjoying some tea and crumpets and doing his thing.
Before we start diving into the good guys, right, the guys that had good weeks, let's go ahead. And I know you had some guys that had poor weeks that you wanted to talk about. So I'll let you go ahead and start, Jacob.
Yeah, I thought, as we got going, it was kind of nice. We talked about some of the good of the week of week 5. But there are definitely some dudes that it's time to panic. We've talked about some of these guys already this year in our short-lived season here at TTNL Keepin It Fantasy, which Derrick Henry, if you were a guy that was like, oh, he's coming back this year, he's healthy, he's ready to roll, they bring in DeAndre Hopkins, he's just going to be able to do much. No. Eye test again. Tajay Spears looks like the better back, is performing like the better back. Henry looks a little old and slow. It's wild, man. He had 9.5 fantasy points last week. I think he's 3.3 yards per carry on the year. It's just not looking too good, man. And on top of that, he's now losing reps to Spears. So if you have any Derrick Henry, I would look to try to get rid of him as soon as possible, just kind of banking on maybe the upside of like, hey, he still could be the workhorse. But, as we talk and I'm saying how he's losing reps to this guy, you got to try to move him as soon as possible. So that's a guy.
I would just to throw caution to the wind before moving him. If it is Tajay Spears, right? And the Titans are, let's say the Titans start finding the red zone a lot more. Wouldn't you think that they would look to Henry in these goal-to-go, short yardage, goal line situations to go ahead and get you some touchdowns? And then maybe he's a little more touchdown reliant, but he's still a viable force on your team.
Where is he? Where's Derrick Henry?
Because we're talking about moving Derrick Henry here. You know what I mean? Like it could be that it's been a bad couple weeks, and then all of a sudden he has himself a day like who were we just talking about? The running back. Oh my gosh,
Breece Hall,
Zach Moss.
Oh,
just like Zach Moss.
I hear what you're saying, and you say the name Derrick Henry, and you're like, you can't believe I get it, but I don't know. I think if you could get out from under him now, I mean, he's RB15 on the year. He's got 328 rushing yards. He's got a couple touchdowns. He's got 101 receiving yards. So, I mean, he's got almost 500 all-purpose yards on the season so it's 5 games, almost 100 all-purpose yards. But where you drafted him at under 10 points again, it's like, fuck, I need to try to get something more out of that spot in terms of value for that draft pick, in my opinion. But I totally understand what you're saying. So if you wanted to hold on to him, it's not fool's gold, because he could fucking turn it around, and next thing you know, you're farting through silk and things are great. So, that's the saying my dad used to say, I guess.
I get it. I get it.
So it's interesting, and there's another running back that I think is somebody you should you can't drop him, but it's mind numbing, is Miles Sanders. The guy that's brought into Carolina. As we root against Carolina, we like to see Miles Sanders not perform from a Bears perspective, but fantasy owners like me who has him on a squad, one fantasy point, I did sit him because they were talking about him being injured. He seems to just be made of glass, and it's unfortunate. It's the old running back adage in the NFL. These dudes it's a challenge to stay healthy as a running back in the league, and he is one of those dudes. He's failed to reach 45 yards in 4 consecutive games in the NFL. Chuba Hubbard seems to be the dude that's getting more reps. Not more reps, but due to the injuries, you're seeing him get playing time. And I just think as a fantasy owner of Miles Sanders, don't expect much. I think it's somebody that's a clear panic mode. He had promise going into the year because we thought Carolina, hey, right? They brought in all these high price free agents. They were going to do something with their little mini quarterback. And, sounded like David Tepper actually talked everybody out of taking CJ Stroud from what I was hearing today is that the team wanted Stroud and Tepper came in, Dave Tepper, I forget the guy's name, whatever, the owner of the Carolina said, and he goes, I want Bryce Young. And there you have it. So when we get the number 1 pick, because Carolina took Bryce Young, thank you. We could send a thank you card to David Tepper. But yeah, those were a couple running backs. Are there anybody that I didn't say off those 2 guys? Is there like a running back, wide receiver?
Oh yeah, no. Tony Pollard had a horrible day. I mean the Cowboys had a horrible game against the 49ers. Tony CeeDee Lamb. Tony only 8.4 points. 8 carries, 29 yards, and he had a fumble on top of that. So it was an abysmal day for Cowboy owner, Cowboy fantasy owners. So it's that was tough. It's very little. There's very, there's not much I could say, but it was a shitty week for the Cowboys, and Tony Pollard was a part of that.
2 of those guys made my list for poor performers in week 5. And one of them is Tony Pollard. In the last 2 weeks, I think he's had less than 18 fantasy points, depending on your breakdown or whatever in your scoring. I'm sorry. Also 14 touches and 12 touches in the last 2 games. So 26 touches. They've been getting smoked, so they're not running the ball, to your point, Ivan, right? And with the Cowboys just playing shitty, they do have a nice little matchup with the Chargers coming up in week 6. So I think it gives you a little hope, like, all right, we got a shot here. To that point, I'm thinking Tony Pollard is an underperformer, and I'm going to slide over to CeeDee Lamb, another guy for the Cowboys that just stunk it up again. I think it's panic mode for him. I think his ceiling's a lot lower going into this year now, and seeing how Dak is playing and what's just going on with the Cowboys. I look at him as a guy, he has had 55 receiving yards or less than 55 receiving yards in his last 3 games, and has had 4 catches 4 out of his last 5 games. So that's not CeeDee Lamb style numbers. That's just poor production. That's that's Chase Claypool's type stuff with the Pittsburgh Steelers before he got traded to the Bears. And we're wondering what the fuck, why we cut what, hey, and now we're talking about CeeDee Lamb. I'm not saying CeeDee Lamb is Chase Claypool. I was just saying those are mediocre numbers for a guy that you thought was going to be really good and just didn't pan out. Now it's just kind of a shitty joke now that I think about it. So,
I'm going to go ahead. Yeah,
but I think he'll be good long term. Dynasty wise, I would, if you can not stash him, but you hope he does a little better moving forward. But they're a dumpster fire in Dallas right now, so maybe trade him, or if you have the ability to take him from someone and buy low, may not be a candidate, bad candidate to try to do in like a keeper league or a dynasty format.
I'm going to go ahead and jump to the tight ends, and I'm going to take 2 tight ends on the same team. You would. 2 tight ends on the same team. I know. You heard me. I'm going to take 2 tight ends from the same team. Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. I almost switched their names up.
Dawson Kincaid.
Neither has been living up to what we were expecting out of them. Knox being, the veteran, he hasn't done what we expected out of him. Having the quarterback that he does. And with Dalton Kincaid, I know he's a rookie, but he hasn't been doing much himself. As of right now, these are the list of fantasy points: 2.6, 4.3, 0.3, 2.7, 1.9. That's not going to get it done. And I drafted him. I dropped him. I had to drop him. And I went ahead and I drafted Knox last year. And it's the same shit. Knox's fantasy numbers so far through 5, 2.5, 2.5, 7, 1.1, 1.2, 1.7. Terrible.
Ooh, yeah, you got tight end.
Stay the hell away from Buffalo Bills tight ends.
Tight end 23 and tight end 30. Yeah, that's a good call. They've been shitty. They have not been good. And especially the hype that Kincaid had. You saw the video during the draft, and the Bills were super excited to be landing this guy. They thought they had that offensive weapon.
I got to talk to our guy, Ben Ricketts. Ben Ricketts was on the Dalton Kincaid hype train.
Yeah,
he was.
I mean, I got it. His tape looked great in college. He killed it.
He looks like his physical stature and what the talent says he could do with the ball.
Yeah.
You like it, but it's just not. It's not being played out.
You're right.
It's not there.
Dude, you're not. You ain't lying, Ivan. You ain't lying.
I ain't lying. You got something?
I don't have a tight end. You know, you sucked up all the tight ends over there. You know, you tight end hawk. But I'm gonna just bring.
And we know you don't have a tight end, motherfucker.
Hey man, wide receivers. You know, I'm gonna bring up wide receivers. I guess perfect segue. Garrett Wilson. We talked about Breece Hall. That was a great call, Ivan, earlier about him just dominating and having a great week. Another week. The Jets' offenses looked pretty solid with them running the football. That has impacted Garrett Wilson. He had a strong performance against the Chiefs. I know I just said over the last 2 weeks, Breece Hall's done well, but the Chiefs, I'm sorry that Garrett Wilson did well against the Chiefs, but he looked not that way against the shitty Denver defense. And so, yeah, I'm a little concerned there, man. With the health of Breece Hall, this seems to be the Jets' offense, and that hurts.
Right now, I think what hurt Garrett Wilson owners was Aaron Rodgers going down in the first game. I mean, I think that was you saw during Hard Knocks, and you heard, the room they were building a rapport. They were building that chemistry, Wilson and Rodgers, and then you lose them. And I understand you got to be a professional and do what you got to do, but you get a guy like Zach Wilson who is obviously in over his head and not the guy in New York. But you're gonna have to do what you got to do, and if that's running the football, well, then so be it. I know they tried to force Zach Wilson into this and like tried to make him the guy because you lost out on Rodgers. It's just not going to be. It's just not going to be. So if you want to go ahead and try to win ball games and stay in contention and hope that Aaron Rodgers comes back for the playoffs, you're going to have to ride Breece Hall all the way. You're going to have to ride that defense, ride that running game, and hope your quarterback doesn't fucking blow it for you. That's pretty much what the Jets are going to do. Real quick, Zane Burns, James Cook, is he a sell? Began the year well, but his usage is going down. I've never been a fan of James Cook. For me, yeah, I would sell him if you could. Just biased opinion, I've never been a fan. So I'm not surprised that I'm not surprised that he's a boom or bust type of a player. So for me, if you could get something for him, that would be a yes for me.
So I'm gonna just follow that up, Ivan, with he was bad last week. He was really, really bad. I think he had negative rushing yards last week. So, but before that, he had almost 15 fantasy points, 13, almost 20, and then he had 10, so he's been mildly consistent. Is he a sell? Possibly. You could go target someone like who had James Conner or Devon Akon, like your boy. But I think he has some value because there's injuries across the league to running backs. And to Sandlin's point, got me. Oh, damn, man, that sucks. Mr. Sandlin, those guillotine leagues sound so much fun. I hate to hear you got beat, man. That sucks. But no, I think you could try to trade him to somebody that needs a running back, and you could actually maybe help your own roster out if you're worried about getting rid of James Cook. So I think I think there's value there. I mean, shit, he's, like I said, he's averaging, what is it, 13.4 or no, his projection is 13.4 in PPR this week. But he's averaging double digits, and for a running back this year, that's not bad.
And it just, that offense in Buffalo, you're expecting these guys to really help them go. And it's been Gabe Davis, Josh Allen, and Stephon Diggs. Yeah. Like, that's the offense in Buffalo, in my opinion. Like, I mean, they still haven't found a running back that's, a threat, in my opinion. Their tight end situation, we just spoke about it. Like, they've been non-existent. So, it's really been the two receivers and the quarterback doing all the work. And the defense, the defense to a point, but
Cook hasn't been bad, though. I mean, he's got just under, he's got 292 rushing yards, 140 receiving yards, 14 catches. He's got 1 touchdown, though. So, he's not lighting the world on fire. Not that this is the James Cook show, but like this is, I could see, why you'd want to sell him. I could see why you'd want to get rid of him, but try to trade him and get something. I think he's got value, so I don't think he's worthless. So that's just my take.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Moving forward, where do you want to go, Jacko?
So we could do a couple of things. We talked about everybody that was doing well. I think we had talked about some stuff. Jamar Chase, DJ Moore, Travis Etienne, all guys that just I still can't get over 19 targets for Chase. That was fucking wild when I saw that. 12 for 19 or 15 for 19, 192 yards, 3 tuds, man. That's 52.2 fantasy points. And DJ Moore came in at 49, which is just wild on 8 catches on 10 targets, 230 with the 3 tuds. It's fucking crazy. It's wild.
Yeah, man. It's Adam Thielen too. And I know it's on a bad team, man, but he just continues to get fantasy football points, bro. 27 points this past week. Like I said, he is older and it's a bad team, but if he's somebody that Mini-Me relies on over there in Bryce Young, hey, it might be a good thing for you for fantasy owners of Thielen.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I fucking love it. And as we talked about Thielen, I did a little bit of I saw some interesting numbers is what I'm trying to spit out here. I'm on like a fucking coach's high. I'm on like a coach's high, just coming back from Little League field, having a big win to get to the finals for this Saturday, but it's going to get fucking rained out. So I'll be playing some point next week, but nonetheless,
sound like you did a big rail before you walked in.
The fucking adrenaline of coaching is something to be said. I came back in the last inning, and it was pretty little. Seeing the kids being pumped, it was pretty awesome. Tomorrow's my son's birthday too, so it was kind of nice. So, Conrad turns 9 tomorrow, so it's fucking wild. Yeah, I'm getting old, and so is he. So shit goes fast, Ivan. You're gonna see. You're gonna end up having like 3 more.
We'll see.
Yeah. So speaking of receivers and targets per game, who do you think leads the NFL for wide receivers with targets per game? If you had to pick somebody, pick a receiver.
Puka Nacua.
Yep, great call. 13. And as we talk about week 5, Justin Jefferson is actually in 3rd place. Going on the IR is tough, man. So if anybody that had those Jordan Addison shares, you're going to be pretty happy because he's definitely going to be he's going to see a little bump and increase in looks probably. And that speaks to, where he is at 11.8 targets a game. But Devontae Adams, who 12.5 targets per game, is still killing me. I needed him last night. He had 4 freaking catches for 40 yards. I'm so angry about that, man. I still can't believe that happened. They threw that touchdown to Jacoby Myers. I saw the 1 on the jersey. I was like, yeah, it's the 16. Fuck, But the surprise on the list, is Michael Pittman, who comes in at 9.8 for targets per shares, and that's top 6, top 7 in the NFL for targets. Where do you think he sits for wide receivers? In fantasy production. Random. I know you're probably like,
let me know.
If you had to pick, do you think he's top 6?
No,
he's top 20. He's a wide receiver 22. I mean, so he has those targets. He's got just under 300 receiving yards with the 1 touchdown. He's averaging 13.7 fantasy points a week. So, I mean, not too bad. But I just thought it was interesting seeing just the targets per share, because it leads me into like my real point is like the tight ends and where they are with respects to who's performing well. You brought up Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid and how they're not performing, right? And so there are only there's only seven wide receivers. Jesus Christ, you got me thinking about wide receivers now. Thanks, Ivan. What the fuck? There's 7 tight ends in the NFL that average over 6 targets a game, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think you could name them all. Who, in your mind, leads the NFL in targets for tight ends?
I want to say that I want to go with the regular.
Go with the obvious.
The top 2, the obvious, the top 2. I would say Kittle.
All right, so Kittle he does not get 6 targets a game. He's not even on this list. That's just crazy. You just said that. That's wild. He is not on there. Well, number 1 is Travis Kelce at 8.7.
That was my second pick.
Hawkinson comes in at second at 7.8. Zach Ertz, 7.5. Evan Ingram. Your boy Laporta. You love Sam Laporta. He's at 6.8. Higbee, 6.5. And then the surprise is Jake Ferguson. You brought him up. Was it last week or the week before? You brought up Ferguson, and we're talking about him being the guy to pick up in the waiver wire because he had, I think it was our first show. You brought Ferguson up, Ivan, and here he is. And to that point, he earns a target every 25% of his routes. So, or he gets targeted 25% of his routes. I'm sorry. So for the amount of run, that's a pretty high percentage. He's number 2 in the NFL for, with that stat. Travis Kelce sees the most targets per routes run at 35%. But Sam Laporta is right there as well. Jonnu Smith, but our boy Cole Kmet coming in at 22%, and he's starting to have a little turnaround in production for fantasy. It's nice to see him in Fields kind of finally getting some plays drawn up to utilize their strengths and seeing Cole Kmet have some fantasy relevance over the last couple of weeks. And those stats, not that they're meaningless, but I just think it goes to show that the tight end position, there's value, in the first, probably 8 slots. We talked about the 6 or 6 targets and only be 7 guys, but there are tight ends there that have, and I think that you're seeing that transition again in the NFL where there's that value fantasy wise early, not early, but in those mid rounds when you're doing your drafts, you need to think about this now because you can actually get a fantasy player that's going to see, almost 10 targets. That's phenomenal. And that's going to mean fantasy relevance. That's to me, that's a successful equation for winning. And it's just something to think about, and I'm kind of rambling about the tight ends here, but
that's fine. You raised good points. I just want to go back to some of the guys that are struggling because there's still a lot we've talked about last year. The tight end struggled. This year it seems like they're all struggling, except for a few, a very select few. It just seems like there's so much fluctuation between week and week to who's the top tight end, or who's in the top 10 as far as tight ends are concerned. A guy that's been a huge disappointment so far has been Pat Freiermuth. He's sitting here at tight end 29, 25.3 fantasy points so far this season. He's right. He's one position above Buffalo Bills tight end Dawson Knox. So not where you were expecting him to be at this point in the season.
He got hurt. He's not playing this week either.
Yeah, he's not playing this week, so it's been a rough go for the tight end from Pittsburgh. It's been kind of tough for the Pittsburgh Steelers, so far. I mean, I believe they got a win this past week, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but regardless of that, it's been rough going for Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, and I see there's a question about Sam Laporta, and his success in Detroit. I think that just speaks to their offense, and they're able to utilize the run game to perfection. They get Jameson Williams back this past week. Not that he did anything. They have a lot of weapons, and I think it gives defenses great pause. They got to figure out the best way to stop them. And Laporta with Ben Johnson drawing it up over there, I think that you have an opportunity. I think Laporta just got drafted into the perfect opportunity and is taking full advantage. He wasn't a thought of theirs when they traded Hawkinson last year to Minnesota, but they seem to be able to figure it out at tight end clearly. And Leaport is just another one of those guys that stepped right in, and his tight end, he's tight end one, basically, 25 catches on 31 targets, just under 300 yards, averaging 14.4 fantasy points. Dude's a beast, man. I think it's pretty wild.
He's the number one tight end in the league right now.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Imagine if they kept Hawkinson as well. I don't know if they get.
That was a wild trade.
I mean, it was wild, but like that'd be a wild combination. Sam Laporta and TJ Hawkinson.
Did they use that draft pick?
That's what I was thinking. Was that where he was? I got to go back and look.
You're gonna have to look it up. I don't know.
Yeah. Either way.
He's a beast. Rookie. To Bob's point, you're right. It's rare to have a rookie tight end put up these kind of numbers, but that offense in Detroit is special, and they're winning, and they're doing it with not only just conventional wisdom, but some trick plays you saw this past weekend. Detroit's for real. It's going to be interesting to see how our boys stack up against them when they come, when we come banging heads with them. It'll be fun.
Yeah, that's a game that I have marked both times because
I think we're clicking, man. It'll be nice to see.
Yeah, the way that they're playing, it's going to be – I'm going to be nervous about it, but if this Bears team could go ahead and continue on this trajectory that they're on, who knows? Maybe they'll give them a go, but we'll see. All right, I want to go ahead and jump into the waiver wire.
Yeah, let's get into the waiver wire, man. Let's wrap up with the waiver wire. I think that's pretty important now, too. What time is it here? It's 10:30. So we're getting close to it over here on the East Coast. So people that have to make their claims, get ready. Shit, I did this last week, but I think my computer's going to die in a minute. So can't have that happen.
Go ahead and jump to it. Well, are you do you
we're
have
good.
it or what?
Yeah, we're good. Go ahead.
All right. Well, you start.
Sure. So do you want to start at quarterbacks? I mean, we could start there. I think, it's been interesting. We talked about Anthony Richardson last week, and we talked about the rookies like CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson, and he gets hurt again, and Gardner Minshew, man, he just seems to be a guy. I like Gardner Minshew,
I do.
He's got Jacksonville this week, they got the 26th or the 19th. What is it? I'm sorry, the 26th ranked defense. Against quarterbacks. I think I don't know. Gardner Minshew maybe a guy to sneak by and grab if you need somebody. I forgot to look at my buys in front of me as we talk here. But if they go against the Jaguars, I think Minshew's somebody that, with that Steichen offense, he scored 15.1 against Baltimore in his only start. But I think he looked really, really good last week, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy that puts up some numbers just if you need somebody in a pinch, But that's where I'm starting here, and I'm going to kick it to you to see if there's as I plug in over here because I gotta do that here, Ivan. But
I agree. No, I agree. Gardner Minshew is a guy who you could pick up, and I think will do fairly well. He's done fairly well every time he's come in and had to help a team with Philadelphia, Jacksonville. He's been on so many. I feel like he changes teams every year, and still is able to contribute. I think that you might want to.
He's rostered in 4% too. He's like free.
Yeah, you might want to kick the tires on. Oh, geez, did I just lose him?
Oh. Uh-oh.
No, Sam Howell. There we go.
Okay.
I think and I mentioned him last week too. Last week. I'm going to mention him again. Only rostered in 25.7% of the league. Was able to throw for over 388 yards. Got me 26 fantasy points after I picked him up. So I think Sam Howell, and granted the Bears were depleted on defense and it was some garbage time stats, but he doesn't look like a terrible quarterback. He doesn't seem like he makes terrible decisions out there. He is protective of the football. I know he threw an interception, but that ball was tipped. You know what I'm saying? He hit the receiver's hands. It got tipped up, and Showman made a play on it. He just did what he had to do as a football player. But I don't think that was on Howell. And 37-51. He also had 4 carries for 19 yards. So if you could go ahead and you're a team that streams their quarterbacks, I think Sam Howell's a guy for you.
I like that. All right. Yeah, no, I think that's a great pick. I mean, when we watched him play against Chicago, he was breaking he looked great. I mean, he made some silly decisions at the same time, with a couple, bad choices, but nonetheless, breaking tag through for over 300 yards, and so we got to see him up close and personal as we watched that game. But another quarterback that I think is somebody to contemplate. He had a good little run going. Last week he kind of struggled against Bengals with just 12.7 fantasy points, but Josh Dobbs, he's rostered in 43% of the leagues now. We're looking at a matchup against the Rams. So it's somebody to think about, man. I think he's thrown for almost 1,000 yards already. He's rushed for 150. He's got 7 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. He's averaging 17.5 fantasy points a game. Something to think about. Like we talked about last week, with knowing that offense and being in that system, and getting traded from Cleveland to here and jumping right in. And there's a reason, because he knew what he was doing and he knows that system. So food for thought.
Right. No, I agree. A couple guys that I really look at. Well, actually, I'll go with one, because one of the guys I'm going to let you go ahead and try to take if you can pick up on it. But Jaleel McLaughlin. From the Broncos. I told you, he's still only rostered in 53.7% of the leagues. He had 17.9 fantasy points. He had 9 carries, 68 yards. He had 3 receptions for 21 yards and a touchdown. So he's a guy that you saw him against the Bears. Dynamic, has a ton of speed and explosion, and he could catch and run. Like, he could lower his shoulder and get after it for a guy that looks a little more slender than some of the bigger backs that we've seen so far. So he looks more of like a McKinnon.
Okay.
From Kansas City. You know what I'm saying?
But
But hey, right off the bat, he gets his starting. He gets a start because of an injury.
Of course.
Gives you 17 points.
Yeah. Hello, sign me up. I grabbed him in one of my, I had a work fantasy league. He was just, nobody put a waiver claim in. I had like the 11th claim. It's one of those things like, so I want to waste a claim. There's no way so I woke up in the morning, I looked, I was like, oh shit. So I just added him and he got me 17, and some change. So I was pretty pumped about that. Especially I had Saquon, who I thought was going to be back, and I had to flip that real fast, but I'm going to stay there with injuries. And I'm going to stay there with a guy that took advantage of someone going down. So with James Conner getting hurt and going on the IR in Arizona, it looks like that we're going to see Marcado, the running back, Amari Marcado out of Arizona. He's a rookie, rostered in only 4%, but he's a guy that was the number 2 last week in their game. Came in, had 10 carries for 45 yards. And while Keontae Ingram had come back from injury, they thought that he was going to be the guy that took over. But with that being said, it didn't transpire. It actually looked to be the other way around. And so what I think I'm getting at is Amari is somebody that I think is going to be a guy to add in Arizona, because it looks to be the number 1 with Ingram coming back from the injury. It sounds like they're easing him back in, and this guy seems to be taking advantage of his opportunity. What more can you ask for? Just like you talked about with your guys. So, he had some fantasy points last week. Like I said, he ended up getting in the end zone. And so it gave him, like I said, he had 10 carries, 45 yards with a catch for 12 yards with the touchdown. So had himself a day coming off the bench and making the most out of something. So I picked 2 Cardinals, which is crazy because they suck. But when you're down, you gotta try to move the ball when you're down. So
they've looked better. They've looked better. They look better than we've thought. I know the coach has taken a lot of shit with his antics, but he's had the Cardinals with, as bad as everybody perceives them to be.
True.
He's got them playing rather well. I'm gonna stay with the running backs.
Okay.
There's a couple guys.
I know who you're gonna say.
Do you know who I'm gonna say?
I think so, but I'm gonna let you say it.
Okay. Got the Foreman.
Yeah.
Go ahead and pick him up. He's, like I said, he's coming back from being a healthy scratch, which is still a question I would like answered. I don't know. I don't feel like that was put out there. I haven't heard anybody say anything about why he was a healthy scratch for a month. But Donta Foreman. Yeah, let's finally see what he can do in this.
Now, what's up with Roschon? Is he still in the protocol?
They've been really tight-lipped about that. Eberflus even said that they're going to go find out more about everything tomorrow. So I guess we all will find out more tomorrow. Once I'm assuming that they're going to have a presser. So we'll see. But Donta Foreman, he's going to get majority of the load, I would assume. I think obviously Darrington Evans is going to be a contributor in that. Like I don't think you're going to sign him not to do anything, especially with everybody's unless you get like a homer back or something like that. But I would imagine that you would rest guys if and not risk anything going forward. So
I think that's a beautiful call. He was on my next list, and so I'm going to follow up with the guy that I had right next to it, Jeff Wilson Jr. You got your boy Devon Akine. See, you made me fuck it up now because I think he used to be the A chain and now he's.
I made you for. I did that.
I'm kidding, and I did that. No, but with him going on, is he going on the IR? No, he's just going to be out for a little bit. Wilson's coming back off the IR, so here we go. Mostert's still the RB1. But it was going to be the Mostert Wilson Jr. punch, the 1-2 punch in Miami before he got hurt. So I'm curious to see. They were two back system, with the two before he kind of got hurt there. And I think Wilson could be a solid pickup. He's rostered in 37% of the leagues, which is wild because he's been hurt. But it just goes to show the potential that people have seen in him before this all went down. So obviously there's potential for usage there, especially in that high potent offense in Miami. And I think it's somebody to really consider. And if you really were desperate, you could take a flyer on their number 3. Was it Salvon Ahmed, who's rostered in like 2% of the league. So that's a couple running backs right there for you. Talk to me, Ivan.
I'm gonna move on to the wide receivers. No, I'm gonna move on to the wide receivers. I got one guy, and this would be my last pick, and I think we could wrap it up from here. Yeah. Unless you got another guy.
Grab Keandre Miller, running back from the set. While we talk about running backs for the Saints, grab him if he's still out there. I think it's worth that. I think he's worth grabbing. He had 12 carries, 37 yards and 4 catches for 53 yards. So something to think about. Yes, sir. Go ahead with your wide receivers, Ivan.
So Josh Reynolds from Detroit. I think he had one big game against Seattle. He had 18 points against Seattle. He had 8 points in the first game against KC, 6.9 against Green Bay, and then he had 13 this past week against Carolina. But he's a guy that you could stash on your bench if one of your receivers goes down or one of your receivers has a bye week. I really feel, and he's don't get me wrong, I feel like he has this boom or bust potential, and not really necessarily bust. It's like boom or even potential because it just seems to be consistent. But when he has a big game, he puts up big numbers. So I would say he's a guy that you would stash on your bench and just keep him in case of emergencies and see what he could do. It's worth a gamble, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I like that call. It's interesting because everybody thought Williams, with him coming back, they're like, oh, he's, I saw people rushing to judgment. And they're like, oh, he's going to be great coming right back. And I think he got like 2.7 fantasy points. They did, I think, say he was on a pitch count. Josh Reynolds averaging, 12.6 fantasy points a game. I think that's a great call, Ivan. It's surprised to see him not rostered higher, so I think you're right on. And so I'm just going to stay in the same conference. We talked about the Justin Jefferson injury with him going out. I talked about Jordan Addison seeing an increase in production, but I think another guy you could think about is KJ Osborne, man. You're rostered in 19% of the leagues. With Jefferson averaging 11 point whatever shares we had talked about before. If you have to cut those in half and say you gave 5 to Addison and 6 to KJ or flip it, you should see an increase in production, I would assume, if our math does us anything. So to that point, I think, and Jefferson was getting over, like, I think he was averaging just under 120 yards a game. So split that in half and give those 60. That's 6 points per player, you know? So I think that's pretty sick, man. I think that's somebody that you may see some quality production, like a wide receiver 3, a super or a flex position as we get into these buys here. You know, I know the Packers are on a buy and Steelers, I believe. I'm trying to think who else, but it'll come to me. But yeah, I'm putting KJ on the list right now as a guy to think about as they go up against the Bears. Can't hear you.
I'm on. I know I have a problem with this mute button. I wish I had a producer that was with me to tell me, hey man, you're on mute.
Who didn't do that?
I don't know. Anyway, that's it for Keeping It Fantasy tonight. I'm Ivan Vargas. That's Chris Jackal. You know, it was a great show. I feel like we hit a lot of good solid points. Looking forward to this week in fantasy. I have one league I'm undefeated. The other league I'm about middle of the pack, but I feel like I could really ride the wave and find myself into a position. So we'll see. But yeah.
In our TTNL league, I have the one team that is I'm awful. I'm 1-4. I think I took a bad beat this past weekend, and I was lost last on the end of Monday night. I'm like, this fucking sucks. God damn it, man. You know. And as we wrap up, I know we breezed through the waiver wire, and we kind of, but like Ivan, you were right with Josh Reynolds, but go get Josh Downs is another guy to go grab, or Rashee Rice. With Quentin Johnson, also, you know, I think he's another guy you should grab. Look, we talked about Tyler Boyd last week. And then lastly, watching the Commanders play, Logan Thomas seemed to be getting on the ball. You seem to be around the ball a lot, you know, in their offense. He's only rostered in 29% of the leagues. He's got Atlanta coming up. I think, you know, he had 1 touchdown on 11 targets with 77 yards against the Bears, 9 catches. And, they got week 6 against Atlanta. So, you know, we kind of breezed through it there, but yeah, go get yourself some wins this week, man. And come join us next Tuesday as Ivan and I get right back into a Tuesday of Chicago Bears football and fantasy football, man.
We'll just start calling it Gruesome Twosome Tuesdays.
Hey, yo.
On TTNL. Hawks win, by the way, or they're about to win, by the way. Nick Foligno capping it off with an empty netter.
Nice.
4-2. Over the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Going undefeated this year, boys.
Oh, hey, only way is up. Only way right from here. Let's go. Anyway, great show, guys. I appreciate everybody that joined in. Appreciate all the comments. You know, it was just a phenomenal night overall, man. We had a lot of Bears talk, a lot of football talk. Good stuff. Jackal, thank you. Obviously,
yeah, man, thank you.
I know you're busting balls, but you had stuff to do. So it's like it's all understandable.
Yeah, so it was tough.
Anyway,
I wish, believe me, you know, like I said, in the 6th inning, it was 8. I'm like, shit. I'm like, fuck, I'm walking off the field now. So I felt awful, but you know, I, like always, you kill it, man. So you know, you're just doing a great job, dude. I love the ABS, another Bears show. Phenomenal, man. Happy for you.
I appreciate it, man. But anyway, let's go ahead and wrap things up.
Yes, sir.
Find us at www.tapeneverlies.com and become a patron. Also, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to all of the Tape Never Lies content. Tomorrow night, Keeping It 100 with everybody, the crew. And Thursday night, Cars Keys is back, giving you all his analytical knowledge on the Bears that he could afford. So, also BHL, of course. BHL on Sundays after the Bears game. So check it out. All right, guys. For me, Ivan Vargas, and for Chris Jackal.
Hey, yo.
Peace.
Deuces.
What's your fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keeping it fantasy. What's your football